Good morning again, guys. This is like the second video of the morning, but I have like 2 hours to tell. I can't even get in the building to go to work, so utilize time wisely, right? Anyway, so for this video, we're going to be doing a book review for the book, The Outer Temple of Witchcraft, Circles, Spells, and Rituals by Christopher Penczak. Now, I'm going to by far tell you, I love these. I love this temple series. I learn a lot. Despite the fact that Christopher Penczak practices Wicca, his books are more inclusive of all paths. He teaches the basics as he understands it and as he knows it. And that's always good. Especially with any author, because you never know what your audience is going to be like, what kind of spiritual path they walk. So, I'm very excited to bring this book review. So let's move into this. This is a pretty decent-sized book, published, copyrighted 2004, and there is actually a companion CD set that goes with this book, which I do not have. One of these days, I'm hopeful I'll get them. And what they are is, on the companion CDs, it has the guided meditations. Like, you'll actually hear someone actually guiding you through the meditations instead of trying to make them yourself. So right off the bat, looking at the table of contents, we see a list of exercises and a list of figures. The list of figures is like the diagrams that are in the book, as well as the list of exercises obviously are a list of the exercises in the book. Then we get into an introduction where he kind of talks about what is the outer temple, what is consisted of it. In the inner temple, we learn the inner workings of the craft, such as meditation, self-introspection, things like that. And now in the outer temple, this is what you're going to learn, which will build on top of what you learned in the outer temple. So if you're one of those people and you don't really want to go with an entire series, because after that it goes into the shamanic temple of witchcraft, which once I actually get the replacement for my book that fell apart, I will do the book review on. So if you don't want to go into like the shamanic temple of witchcraft, the high temple of witchcraft, and then the rest of them, at least read the inner and outer temple, because they will teach you a lot more information. Okay. So moving on to that, we actually get into the very first chapter, which talks about sacred space and the circle. This chapter will teach you how to, set up a circle, and how to set up sacred space for use in magical work. Then in chapter 2, he goes over a little bit more of the foundations of magic, kind of briefly touching on some of the topics he talked about in the outer temple. Just in case you decided to pick this book up and not the first one, at least you get a little bit of the foundations. And then the next chapter, chapter 3, it talks about the ethical witch. It talks about things that are usually, common sense ethics for a witch, like, don't harm other people with magic, things like that. And it goes over a lot more than just what I'm generally talking about as well. I'm just trying to give a couple of examples, okay? Then after that, we go into the role of a priest and priestess. It talks about, like, when you're in a coven setting, the role of having that priest and priestess there, what they do, what they're responsible for, just in case you are part of a coven structure. And then from there, we go into 13 lessons that he has put together. And he lectures and teaches classes on each of these books. These are just, as you say, they're like the course manual for each of the books, if you will. So in lesson 1, you learn about various gods and goddesses. In lesson 2, we learn about the elementals. In lesson 3, we learn specifically about the element of fire and water. In lesson 4, you learn specifically about the elements of air and earth. Okay, always good information to know, and there's quite a bit of information in any of these chapters, okay? Lesson 5, it talks about the tools. Very straightforward. In lesson 6, it talks about divination, various divination forms. And then in lesson 7, we go back to talking about the witch's circle. This, I think, also talks about like about coven, building a coven structure, the importance of a coven, things like that as well. Then in lesson 8, one of my favorite chapters is lesson 8 and 9, the science of spellcraft. So how do our spells work, essentially? The science behind them. Then in the next lesson, it talks about how to create your own spells for your own spellcraft practice, as well as it talks about, kind of like the art behind it as well, because spellcraft is both a science and an art, if you will. Then after that, we go into lesson 10, which talks about the wheel of the year, the different sabbats, the S-bots, all those kinds of things. Lesson 11 talks about web weaving or networking, finding people. If you're solitary, finding like groups that you can go to, like study groups and things like that. And then lesson 12 is all about coven work. Especially if you're going to become a part of a coven, you kind of need to know some information about a coven structure, the point and the goal of a coven as well. And then, of course, as with all of his lessons, lesson 13 is not really a lesson. It is just your second degree initiation. This goes into I believe it's the first 2 degrees, and then when you finish the rest of the series, you get your 3rd degree, but I'm not 100% on that. So I will definitely have to take a look at the next book and see if that is true or not. So, and then you get Appendix 1, 2, and a bibliography. In Appendix 1, you get like a giant test to take over everything you learned in the first book. And in Appendix 2, you get quick reference to the different chants that are mentioned within the book as well. And then, of course, a bibliography is, hold on one second. I gotta do it this way. And then the bibliography is like a list of various books that were quoted within the entire book itself. All right. And of course, lots of information there. Not really going to go over it too much, but just know that it is going to be a huge list of all the books mentioned. So now what I want to do is I want to dive down and take a look at these chapters, which I should probably do this the easier way. Okay. So with the first couple of chapters, like the introduction, it's pretty bland, pretty boring, no frills kind of thing, as you can see. Okay. And that's for those first couple chapters of the book itself. Now I just got to go back. And then when you get to the lessons, they are set up a little bit differently. So let me click on that. They're set up just a very little bit differently. As you could see, it does have the number instead of just lesson 1, who are the gods. It actually does have a number to kind of keep you on track as to what chapter you're in. So, it's not much of a difference, but it is a bit of a difference, okay? And then there are lots of diagrams and tables and things like that in here. And this is actually where I got the basis of my witchy worldview, if you will, was the diamond of divinity. And it uses the analogy that the creative source is like a diamond, and from all the facets of that diamond come the various gods and goddesses that are aspects of that creative source. Okay, so I'm trying to find, as you can see, it'll say figure 2, diamond of divinity, and it actually gives a visual, and that's what that list of figures is for, so you can go right to them if you need to quick reference after you have read the book itself. And like I said, this is a very big book. A very big book. So, and then there's another one. It talks about the yin-yang and the divine through the cycles of life. And then, of course, it's got another one for the yin-yang symbol. And then we also have pentagram of divinity. So he gives various, what's the term I'm looking for here? He gives various examples of the various topics that he talks about. So he gives you several different examples to get ready and to understand. And then, of course, it goes into archetypal beings like the sky god, and then it talks about the sky god, and in there it will also give like a few names from various mythologies about who would fall under the sky god, things like that, just to kind of help you build connections. And I'm very sorry about that. My phone, I'm doing this on my phone again, so. But, and then if I can get to the end, some of these chapters are pretty long, so definitely make sure you have plenty of time in order to, and yeah, you can take the spreadsheets and enlarge and remove them as well. So, give me a second. I gotta re-pull this book back up. I exited out too far. So yeah, you can open the spreadsheets and pull them up so you can read them a little bit better, or a chart, I should say. So, right there. So that's what the exercises in each book look like. You can get anywhere from one exercise to a multiple of different exercises. So it'll have a bar, and then it'll say exercise 6, meditation with the goddess and God, and it will give you the step-by-steps. And that's what I was talking about. The companion CD will actually have those exercises and meditations on them. And he'll walk you through, either he or whoever he hired to make the CDs, to do the voicing for the CDs, will actually walk you through step by step on how to do those different exercises and things like that as well. So, and then of course, like with any book that's meant to be like a textbook, you're going to have homework for each lesson. And I do recommend doing the lessons because it will open your eyes to a lot of different things. You'll see different aspects on various things like that. And not to mention, it'll help you with your Book of Shadows, or Grimoire and Book of Spells, whatever it may be for you. So like this one says, complete exercise 6, record experiences in your Book of Shadows, continue to build your relationship with the many aspects of the goddess and God, and then you're also supposed to start doing research on any deities that you've met in a meditation, or any deities or cultural pantheons to which you are intuitively connected. I'm not going to read the rest of this. And then, of course, continue journaling regularly. So it's a very simple homework, and it does have annotations. And then it goes into the next one. So that's how the book is set up. So definitely, I would definitely say, give this book a read. Give the Inner Temple a read first, and then build on it with the Outer Temple book. Definitely one of those kinds of series where you want to build the information on top of each other, okay? So with that being said, where would I rate this book? I would rate this book a 4.9. I don't really like giving I don't really like giving a lot of books. Don't really like giving a lot of books perfect ratings. Like perfect 5-star ratings. So, we're going to give this a 4.9 out of 5. And the main reason is mainly because a lot of this information is more gravitated towards Wicca, but still inclusive of all walks of magical life. Okay? So, definitely, would I recommend it to a newbie? Would I recommend it to my friends and family? Yes, I would. Actually, scratch that. Hell yes, I would. Okay? Definitely, this is a very solid thing, and this is actually one of the, I think I read this book, I think this is like the 4th book I read. Believe it or not, full disclosure, guys, I started learning the craft from the book, Grimoire for the Solitary Witch, I believe is what the name of it is, by Silver Ravenwolf. And then I read Pagan Ways after that. And then I got these 2 books, and so I base a lot of my magic and how I function in my magic and spell work come from just the Inner and Outer Temple, mainly because it is so straightforward and so simple to understand and learn and pick up as far as the practice is concerned. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to let y'all go. So until next time, peace out and namaste.